Let me ask you something. Do you think you're financially successful? Be honest. Not what you tell people at dinner parties, what you tell yourself at 2 a.m. when you're looking at your bank account. Most people have no idea where they actually stand. They compare themselves to their neighbors, their coworkers, their Instagram feed, and they call that doing okay. Here's what nobody in finance wants to admit. Success isn't loud. It's not flashy. It's not a Tesla in the driveway. Real financial success is quiet. It's invisible. And most people miss it entirely because they're looking in the wrong place. I'm Jensen Huang, billionaire, CEO, and I've spent decades studying what separates people who build wealth from people who just look wealthy. In this video, I'm breaking down 5 small signals that prove you're on the right track financially. And number 4, it's the difference between retirement at 65 and working until you die. If you're serious about understanding money, not just making it, subscribe now. This is not a hype channel. This is reality. Most of you aren't broke because you don't make enough money. You're broke because you're spending someone else's life. You're driving the car your neighbor drives. You're taking the vacation your coworker posted about. You're buying the house that matches what your college friends have. And every single dollar you spend trying to keep up is a dollar that will never work for you. Here's the first signal you're becoming financially successful. You stop comparing your lifestyle to others. Not because you're humble, not because you're enlightened, because you finally understand that comparison is a financial disease that will kill your future. Let me break this down. When I started NVIDIA, I drove a beaten-up car for years. My friends were buying BMWs. My peers were upgrading homes. And you know what I was doing? I was reinvesting every dollar I could into the business. People thought I was cheap. They thought I didn't care about success. But I knew something they didn't. Lifestyle is a trap. It's a performance. And every performance costs money. The moment you stop performing wealth and start building it, everything changes. Here's what most people don't realize. Every time you buy something to match someone else's life, you're not just spending money. You're locking yourself into a financial identity that isn't yours. You see your neighbor's new truck. You feel a little pang of inadequacy. So you finance a truck. Now you've got a $700 monthly payment for the next 6 years. Your coworker goes to Europe. You see the photos. You feel like you're missing out. So you book a trip you can't afford. Now you've got $4,000 on a credit card at 22% interest. Your friend buys a bigger house. You feel like you're falling behind. So you stretch your budget and buy something at the top of your range. Now you're house poor, living paycheck to paycheck in a place that looks successful but feels like a prison. This is the cycle. And it doesn't stop until you decide to stop it. Here's the truth. You cannot build wealth while you're busy looking wealthy. The two are opposites. Looking wealthy costs money. Building wealth requires keeping money. And the people who figure this out early are the ones who win. Now, I'm not saying you should live like a monk. I'm not telling you to deprive yourself of everything. I'm saying you need to stop letting other people's lives dictate your spending. Because here's what happens when you finally break free from comparison. You start asking better questions. Instead of, what will people think if I don't have this? You start asking, does this actually move me forward? Instead of, how can I afford this? You start asking, is this worth the trade-off? Instead of, am I keeping up? You start asking, am I building something real? And that shift in questions changes everything. Let me give you a real example. I know a guy who made $120,000 a year. Good income, not wealthy but comfortable. He lived in a nice neighborhood, drove a leased Audi, took 2 vacations a year, had the right clothes, the right watch, the right everything. And he had $3,000 in savings. One medical emergency, one job loss, one unexpected expense, and he was financially destroyed. But he looked successful. And that's what mattered to him. Now compare that to another guy I know who made $85,000 a year, drove a paid-off Toyota, lived in a smaller house, didn't take expensive vacations, wore the same clothes for years, and he had $80,000 in investments and 0 debt. Who do you think slept better at night? Who do you think had more freedom? Who do you think was actually financially successful? The answer is obvious. But most people are still chasing the first guy's life. Here's the psychological part that messes people up. We're wired to compare. It's human nature. We look at others to figure out where we stand. But in modern society, that wiring is being hijacked. You're not comparing yourself to your neighbor anymore. You're comparing yourself to everyone on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You're comparing yourself to highlight reels, to staged lives, to people who are faking it just as hard as you are. And the result? You're in a race you can't win, spending money you don't have, to impress people who don't care. So how do you know when you've actually broken free from this? It's not a big moment, it's small. You'll be scrolling through social media and see someone's vacation photos. And instead of feeling jealous or inadequate, you'll feel nothing. Not because you're bitter, not because you don't want good things, because you're focused on your own plan. And their life has nothing to do with yours. You'll walk past a car dealership and see a brand new luxury SUV. And instead of thinking, I need that, you'll think, that's a $60,000 liability. You'll hear your coworker talk about their new kitchen renovation. And instead of feeling behind, you'll think, that's their priority. Mine is different. That's the signal. When you stop measuring your worth by other people's spending, you've crossed a line. And once you cross it, you can't go back. Because you'll start to see comparison spending for what it really is, a trap designed to keep you broke. Here's what I want you to understand. The people who look the most successful are often the least successful. Real wealth is invisible. It's in accounts you don't talk about. It's in assets that don't scream. It's in freedom that nobody sees. And the moment you stop trying to prove your success to others is the moment you can actually start building it. So ask yourself, are you spending to build or spending to perform? Because if you're still comparing, you already know the answer. And here's the thing. Once you stop comparing, you unlock the ability to say no. Which brings us to signal number 2, and it's where most people fail without even realizing it. Here's a question that will reveal everything about your financial future. How many times this month did you say yes to something you didn't actually want to do? Dinner with friends you couldn't afford. A wedding gift that stretched your budget. A round of drinks because everyone else was buying. A subscription you forgot to cancel. A weekend trip because you didn't want to be left out. Count them up. Because every time you said yes when you should have said no, you traded your future for comfort in the moment. And that's the difference between people who build wealth and people who stay broke. Signal number 2 that you're becoming financially successful is simple. You start saying no, not to everything, not to life, not to joy, but to things that don't serve you, to things that drain you, to things you only said yes to because you were afraid of what people would think. Let me be clear about something. Saying no is not deprivation. It's not being cheap. It's not being antisocial. It's not missing out on life. Saying no is the most powerful financial tool you have. Because every yes costs you something. Time, money, energy, freedom. And most people are giving away all 4 without even thinking about it. Here's the brutal truth. You cannot build wealth if you can't say no. Impossible. Because wealth isn't built by what you earn, it's built by what you keep. And you can't keep anything if you're constantly saying yes to everyone else's priorities. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, I watched a young engineer at NVIDIA make $150,000 a year. Great salary for someone in their late 20s. But every month, he was broke. Not because of bad investments, not because of medical bills, because he couldn't say no. His friends wanted to go out every weekend. He said yes. His girlfriend wanted expensive dinners. He said yes. His family asked him to help with their bills. He said yes. His coworkers wanted to split a luxury Airbnb for a trip. He said yes. And at the end of every month, he had nothing left. He wasn't living his life. He was funding everyone else's. Now, I'm not saying you should be selfish. I'm not saying you should never help people or enjoy yourself. I'm saying you need to understand what yes actually costs. Because here's what nobody tells you. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. You say yes to that $200 dinner, you're saying no to investing that $200. You say yes to that finance car, you're saying no to financial flexibility for the next 5 years. You say yes to that vacation you can't afford, you're saying no to your emergency fund. The math is simple, but most people never do it. They just keep saying yes, wondering why they're always stressed about money. Here's the psychological part that traps people. We're terrified of missing out. FOMO isn't just a social media thing, it's a financial killer. You see your friends doing something and you think, if I don't go, I'll be left out. I'll be forgotten. I'll be the boring one. So you go, you spend, you smile, you pretend you can afford it, and when you get home, you're hit with the regret, the credit card bill, the empty bank account. But next time, you'll do it again. Because the fear of social rejection is stronger than the fear of financial failure. Until it isn't. And that's when things change. The moment you realize that the people who actually care about you won't judge you for saying no is the moment you take your power back. Real friends don't care if you skip an expensive dinner. Real family doesn't guilt you into spending beyond your means. Real partners support your financial goals, not sabotage them. And everyone else? They're not your problem. Here's what saying no actually looks like. It's not dramatic. It's not a big speech. It's just honest. I can't make it to that trip. I'm saving for something right now. I'm not going out tonight, trying to stick to a budget. I appreciate the invite, but I'm focusing on my finances this year. Simple. Direct. No apology needed. And you know what happens when you start saying this? Some people will understand. Some won't. The ones who don't understand will fade away. And that's fine, because they were never invested in your success anyway. They were invested in your participation. The ones who do understand will respect you more, and you'll start attracting people who think like you. People who value building over spending. People who have their own goals and respect yours. That's the shift. Now, here's the part that most people struggle with. Saying no feels like losing. It feels like you're missing out, like you're being left behind, like life is happening without you. But that's a lie. Life isn't happening at expensive brunches and financed cars and trips you can't afford. Life is happening when you have the freedom to make choices, when you're not stressed about money, when you're not trapped by debt, and you only get there by saying no to the things that don't matter, so you can say yes to the things that do. Let me tell you what changed for me. Early in my career, I was invited to a lot of things: industry events, expensive dinners, conferences in exotic locations, and I said no to most of them. Not because I didn't want to go, not because I was antisocial, because I knew that every hour I spent at those events was an hour I wasn't spending building NVIDIA. Every dollar I spent on appearances was a dollar I couldn't invest in the company. And people judged me for it. They called me obsessed. They said I was missing out on life. But I wasn't missing out. I was building something that would give me more freedom than any of those events ever could. That's the trade-off. And most people aren't willing to make it. They want the freedom, but they're not willing to say no to get it. Here's how you know you've made the shift. You'll get an invitation to something expensive, something you used to say yes to automatically. And instead of feeling anxious about saying no, you'll feel relieved, because you're not lying to yourself anymore. You're not pretending you can afford things you can't. You're not performing a version of yourself that doesn't exist. You're just being honest. And honesty is the foundation of financial success. You'll start noticing that your calendar gets clearer, your bank account gets fuller, your stress gets lighter. Not because you're missing out, because you're finally in control. Here's the thing people don't understand about saying no. It's not about restriction, it's about intention. When you say no to things that don't serve you, you create space for things that do. You say no to eating out 5 times a week, you create space to invest $500 a month. You say no to upgrading your car, you create space to pay off debt. You say no to impressing people who don't matter, you create space to build a life that actually does. That's the power of no. And once you start using it, everything changes. But here's the part that really separates people who make it from people who don't. It's not just about saying no to others, it's about saying no to yourself. No to the impulse buy. No to the upgrade you don't need. No to the justification that you deserve it. Because that voice in your head that says just this once is the same voice that keeps you broke. And the moment you start saying no to that voice is the moment you start winning. So here's my challenge to you. This week, say no to one thing you would have normally said yes to. Just one: a dinner, a purchase, an obligation. And instead of spending that money, move it into savings, into investments, into something that builds. And notice how it feels. It might feel uncomfortable at first. It might feel like you're losing something, but you're not losing. You're gaining control. And once you have control over your money, something else shifts. The way you talk about money changes completely, which is exactly what signal number 3 is about. What did you say the last time someone asked you how you're doing financially? Did you say, "I'm broke"? Did you complain about bills? Did you laugh it off with, "Money's tight, you know how it is"? Or did you talk about your plan, your progress, your next move? Because the words you use about money reveal everything about your financial future. Here's signal number 3. Your financial conversations change. Not just what you say to others, what you say to yourself. The internal dialogue. The way you think about money when no one's listening. And this shift is one of the most powerful indicators that you're becoming financially successful. Because people who stay broke talk like victims. People who build wealth talk like owners. Let me show you what I mean. Broke people say, "I can't afford it." Wealthy people say, "Is this worth the trade-off?" Broke people say, "I'll never get ahead." Wealthy people say, "What's my next move?" Broke people say, "The system is rigged." Wealthy people say, "How do I navigate this system?" Same situation, different language, different outcome. Here's the truth. Your words shape your reality. Not in some mystical manifestation way, in a very practical, psychological way. When you talk like a victim, you think like a victim. And when you think like a victim, you act like a victim. You stop looking for solutions. You stop taking responsibility. You stop believing change is possible. And that's how you stay stuck. But when your language changes, your behavior changes. When you stop complaining and start strategizing, you become someone who solves problems instead of someone who suffers from them. When you have a plan, you gain power. The internal shift is immediate. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What am I going to do about this?" You stop saying, "I can't," and start asking, "How can I?" You stop hunting for excuses and start hunting for solutions. That change in questions changes everything. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. Ask victim questions, get victim answers. Ask owner questions, get owner answers. Here's what that looked like for me. When I started NVIDIA, we were constantly short on money. Every day was a risk. I could have spent my time saying, "This is impossible," like everyone else, investors, competitors, even my own team. But I didn't. Not because I ignored the problems, but because I knew that talking like we were doomed would make us doomed. Instead, I asked, what needs to be solved? Who do we need to convince? What's the next step? Every conversation was about action, not fear. That mindset kept us moving forward when everything else was falling apart. Here's the key. The way you talk about money doesn't just reflect your situation, it shapes it. Complain about being broke and you reinforce being broke. Talk about your plan and you reinforce being a builder. Over time, you become the person you talk about. Say, "I'll figure this out," and you will. Say, "I'm terrible with money," and you stay terrible. Simple, hard, true. The conversation that matters most is the one you have with yourself. The voice in your head when you check your accounts, decide whether to buy something, or compare yourself to others. This voice either helps or hurts you. Most people listen to the voice that destroys them. "You'll never get ahead." "You deserve this, just buy it." "Everyone else is doing better." Changing that inner dialogue changes everything. Start saying, "I'm building something. This takes time. Wanting isn't needing. Their path isn't mine." Those conversations produce new behaviors. New behaviors produce new results. New results produce confidence. Confidence shapes better conversations. It's a cycle, and you choose which cycle you live in. You'll know it's working when you talk about money differently. Someone asks, and instead of complaining or joking, you give facts and a plan. Paying off my car 8 months. Saving for a down payment halfway there. Investing 15% of my income building long term. No drama, no victim language, just clarity. People notice. They stop seeing you as someone to pity and start seeing you as capable. Opportunities appear. People invest in, hire, and partner with those who speak like problem solvers. Your language is a signal. Finally, this isn't about faking it, it's about honesty. Most people avoid the truth, pretending things are better or worse than they are. Denial keeps you stuck. Speak honestly. Stop saying, I'm fine when you're not. Stop saying, I'm broke when you're just undisciplined. Stop saying, I'll never get ahead when you haven't tried. Then add, here's what I'm going to do. That conversation changes everything. Once your conversations change, you're ready for the next signal, the one most people miss entirely and the most critical of all. Let's talk about signal number 4, the critical one. The one that separates people who look successful from people who actually are. Signal number 4, you start accumulating boring money, not exciting money, not flashy money, not money that impresses anyone. Boring money. Money in a savings account that just sits there. Money in index funds that grow slowly. Money that pays down debt one payment at a time. Money that does absolutely nothing except exist. And here's the part that kills most people. Boring money doesn't feel like success. It feels like nothing. You can't drive it. You can't wear it. You can't post it on Instagram. It's just numbers in an account that no one sees and no one celebrates. But boring money is the foundation of every single financially successful person I've ever met, including billionaires, especially billionaires. Let me explain why this is the most critical signal, because this is where most people fail without even knowing it. They think financial success looks like a new car, a bigger house, a luxury vacation, designer clothes, the latest tech. They think success is visible, and so they spend their entire lives chasing visible success while completely ignoring invisible wealth. And invisible wealth is the only wealth that matters. Here's the truth. Real wealth is boring as hell. It's $10,000 sitting in an emergency fund doing nothing. It's $500 a month going into a retirement account you won't touch for 30 years. It's a paid-off car that runs fine but doesn't turn heads. It's a mortgage that's smaller than what you qualified for. It's saying no to the upgrade, the vacation, the thing you want right now so you can have freedom later. Here's the real psychology behind why boring money feels almost impossible. Human beings are built for immediate gratification. We want proof right now that our choices mattered. Not decades from today, today. And boring money refuses to give us that proof. It doesn't cheer, it doesn't sparkle, it doesn't make anyone jealous. It just sits there, quietly compounding at 7 or 8% a year, looking completely unimpressive. Compare that with a new car, a bigger apartment, or the latest gadget. Those things deliver instant status and instant dopamine. They make you feel like you're moving forward even when you're not. So most people choose the thing that feels good today and trade a future they can't see for a feeling that disappears in months. That's the trap. The only escape is learning to tolerate boredom, to be comfortable with money that appears to do nothing, with progress you can't post online, with results that are invisible for years. You'll know you've crossed that line when you check your investments and see they're up 8%, and you feel calm instead of disappointed. You'll understand that 8% repeated for 30 years is how ordinary people retire wealthy. You'll look at $15,000 in an emergency fund and think, this is my protection, instead of, what could I buy with this? You'll make an extra mortgage payment and feel proud rather than deprived, because success is no longer measured by what you own, but by what you owe less of. That mental shift changes everything. When my own company began producing real profits, I faced that test. I could have bought the mansion, the yacht, the loud symbols that announce you've arrived. Instead, I reinvested, saved, and built reserves. Friends told me I was crazy. They said a millionaire should live like one. But I understood a simple truth. Flashy money evaporates while boring money compounds. I wasn't trying to look rich. I was trying to become unbreakable. That difference separates people who get rich from people who stay rich. The first group spends the windfall. The second group protects it, and protecting it is painfully boring. So do a quick audit. Look at your accounts and ask how much of your money is truly boring. Money that exists only to guard you, grow quietly, and buy freedom later. If the answer is zero, you're not building wealth. You're only managing survival. Real building has a clear foundation. 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting untouched, 15% of income flowing into retirement accounts, and no high-interest debt. None of that is exciting, but it makes every other part of life easier. You stop living one emergency away from disaster. You stop making desperate decisions. You begin to feel free, and freedom is the real prize. The last signal is more psychological than financial. You stop feeling guilty for wanting wealth. Most of us were trained to believe that wanting money is selfish, that success steals from others, that doing well while someone else struggles makes you a bad person. That belief quietly keeps millions of people broke. Let me say this plainly. There is nothing immoral about wanting a better financial life. You are not required to stay small so other people feel comfortable. You are allowed to win. Guilt sabotages people in subtle ways. They overspend to rescue relatives who never change. They hide promotions so friends won't feel inferior. They apologize for progress. Every one of those actions reinforces the idea that success is shameful. I watched this happen to someone close to me. They grew up poor, fought through school, and eventually earned 6 figures. Each visit home filled them with guilt for escaping the struggle. They paid bills no one asked them to pay, lent money that was never returned, and minimized every achievement. The result? Constant stress and zero appreciation. Their family didn't respect the sacrifice, they simply expected more. Guilt helped no one. It only drained the person who felt it. Freedom arrived when they realized their success wasn't stealing opportunity from anyone. Their paycheck didn't make relatives poorer. Letting go of that false responsibility allowed them to build a stable life and help from a position of strength instead of panic. We're often told that money is evil and the rich are greedy. But money is just a tool. In the right hands, it pays medical bills, funds education, creates businesses, and supports communities. You can do far more good with resources than without them, yet you'll never have those resources if guilt controls your decisions. Ask yourself a few honest questions. Do you apologize when you talk about doing well? Do you feel pressure to spend money to keep others comfortable? Do you downplay your progress? If yes, that emotion is quietly stealing your future. You'll know you've passed this signal when you can answer a simple question about your finances without shrinking. When someone asks how you're doing, you can say, "I'm doing well. I've been investing and it's working," with no embarrassment. When pressured to spend, you can calmly say no because your goals matter. When you see others struggling, you can offer guidance or help without destroying your own stability. That is real confidence. These 5 signals aren't about perfection, they're about direction. Are you drifting with everyone else, or deliberately moving toward independence? Are you reacting to life, or designing it? If you recognize most of these signs in yourself, keep going. You're on the path. If only a couple resonate, you now know exactly where the work is. And if none of them feel familiar, be honest. You're stuck, but at least you can see the door. Financial success isn't a single moment or a magic number. It's a chain of small decisions, ignoring comparison, learning to say no, changing the language you use about money, embracing boring growth, and releasing guilt. So pick one signal you haven't reached, just one. This week, stop comparing yourself to one person, decline one unnecessary expense, move a little cash into a boring account, or drop one piece of guilt you've been carrying. That's how transformation begins, not with fireworks, but with a quiet decision to act differently. The financially successful version of you is already forming. These signals simply reveal it. If this message helped you see the truth about where you stand, take a second to engage and tell me which signal you're working on.